What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'll be taking you guys through the best team for the upcoming Game Week 3. So we did do this in Game Week 2 and apparently you guys did enjoy it. Read the comments, looked at the likes, saw you guys wanted me to continue this series. So I thought that I would return this episode for Game Week 3 and see how it goes. So if you guys don't know how this kind of best team works or this kind of video series works, I look at two specific team selections for the upcoming game week. So the first one is going to be a little bit more kind of targeted at the upcoming game week, and the reason for that is that it's the best team for the upcoming game week, or basically the team that's predicted to score the most points for that game week on the horizon. So we're looking at kind of that team, looking at what it covers. I would use this kind of as a baseline if you guys want a wild card, use the free hit, but also it's quite informative if you guys do generally just have free transfers, because you can either look at 1 week punts or you can kind of look at teams that are highly favored in their respective fixture, and you can look at double ups, triple ups, or maybe just even captaincy options. I always find it interesting to see what kind of players are predicted to score the most points so that I can compare my current team selection to that one and see how many points I think I can get. Then the second team is going to be also quite interesting. We're going to be looking at the top 1000 template team, which is basically a team of the highest owned players that the top 1000 managers in the overall ranks do have at the current moment. This is also quite interesting. Kind of one thing that you can do is compare your own team selection to theirs, and then you can get one, differentials, and two, you can kind of compare yourself to the managers that are at the tippity top of the overall ranks, and maybe you can consider players that you should bring in that are performing quite well. Hint, hint, someone like a Ben Rama or an Antonio. I would probably bring in one of those two options if you guys don't have them, or two, maybe just differentials that you think could actually end up performing better than the top 1000 over the upcoming game weeks. So if you guys are still interested in this video, hopefully you are, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So I mentioned in yesterday's team selection, go check that out if you guys haven't. I mentioned that I was going to give you guys updates on every single video this week on this whole international break dilemma that we currently do have. And the update that I do have for you today is quite a positive one actually. Us FPL managers are looking quite good because the Premier League came out. There was a meeting yesterday between all the Premier League teams, and they kind of came to the consensus that they don't want to send their players out to red zone countries. We spoke about what red zone countries are. They have allowed the players to travel to amber level countries, and what those amber level countries allow the players to do is that once they return back to the UK, they don't have to isolate at all, and they're not really at a risk of missing game week 4 in that case. The only reason that they might miss game week 4 is if the last fixture of that international break happens at quite a late hour or at quite a late stage. Maybe they're going to miss the kickoff for game week 4 once they return from their respective teams. But it looks quite good for us. As I said, there has been a release from the FIFA president saying that he hopes the kind of higher powers in the respective leagues release the players to play in the international break just because he thinks it's the right thing to do, and it's going to provide unity against the situation that we currently are in. Now, I don't think the domestic teams are going to kind of bite at this, but I don't think this is the last we're going to hear about this international break dilemma, and I will keep you guys updated as news does come out. But as I said, quite positive for us. It currently looks like we should have a full kind of a scale of players to pick from, and we don't really have to worry about any players missing game week 4 at this current stage. So the first team that we're going to be looking over is going to be the best predicted team specifically for game week 3. So please just keep that in mind. I'm not kind of looking at what team is going to perform the best over the upcoming 6 game weeks. You guys can do that on your own. And right off the bat, I will tell you the specs that this team, or what I gave the algorithm to create this team, were. The first thing was that I put 0% emphasis on the bench. I'm not really worrying about the bench too much. We're going for kind of the best starting 11 for the upcoming game week 3. So I don't want to leave any money on the bench as possible. So what I did was 0% on the bench, and then I also did exclude certain players. So right now Tsimikas is expected to score quite a lot of points because he obviously did quite well in the opening 2 game weeks, but because Robertson is back and they do face Chelsea, which I'm expecting Robertson to return to the starting lineup, I think that Tsimikas' expected minutes are going to go completely down, and his predicted points will as well. So I excluded him. If you guys are doing this yourself on the Fantasy Football Fix website, the algorithm could actually have been updated already, and we could see Tsimikas already out of the lineup. So that was the one player that I did exclude, and I just wanted to kind of disclose that before you guys are kind of wondering why Tsimikas keeps on popping up in your own kind of algorithm predictors. But with that out the way, let's get onto the lineup. So starting off with the bench, I'm not going to focus on the bench too much. As I mentioned, kind of put 0% emphasis on it, so those players probably won't even start for their respective teams, so we won't be focusing on them. But going on to the starting 11, we have a nice 4-3-3 formation, and if memory serves me right, I think last week the predictor actually kind of used this formation as well, so it seems to be quite a popular formation. I personally am using a 3-5-2, so kind of nowhere near a 4-3-3, but if you guys are using it, maybe you're reaping the rewards and are currently higher than me in the overall ranks. But what you'll notice about the algorithm, and that's probably what I'm going to talk about firstly, a couple of talking points that you can see from the algorithm is that it really does prefer certain fixtures, and it kind of prefers double ups, triple ups if it really thinks that that game is going to be quite fortuitous for that respective team. And the teams that are kind of focused on here are going to be firstly Leicester. We got a triple up of Leicester assets, and we also have a triple up of those West Ham assets. We then also have a triple up of the Spurs assets, because I guess those three fixtures, Norwich, Crystal Palace and Watford, are currently rated as some of the best in the Premier League, at least according to the algorithm. So that kind of leads me onto the talking point that I've seen either on Twitter or in my comments, people asking me, should they double up, should they bring in a Ben Rama if they already have an Antonio? And to be honest, I've never had a problem with kind of double ups, triple ups even. I just think that that's probably how I play the game. If a team has a really good fixture, I'm perfectly fine kind of putting all my eggs in one basket, because I think that if they do have a great fixture, you can do that. So if, for example, you're asking about a Ben Rama and an Antonio, I 100% would be fine with that, just because West Ham have great fixtures coming up. I don't really think there's any other team that can kind of compare to how well West Ham are playing at the current moment. So triple ups, I'm 100% fine with. I've never really been the manager that has 6 attacking players and chooses them from 6 respective teams, different teams, for example, as I just think that I really attack the fixtures and I put all my eggs in one basket, as I said earlier on. So another interesting talking point coming out of the algorithm is that it actually doesn't have any Manchester United players. No defenders, no attackers at all. And to be honest, I can kind of agree with the algorithm. If you guys did watch my kind of fixture predictor, my fixture analyzer video, I didn't necessarily agree with how well kind of a fantasy football fixes algorithm was ranking the Wolves fixture. But after the first 2 game weeks, they've played Leicester, which was 1-0, they lost, and they also faced Spurs in game week 2, where they also lost 1-0. But 1-0 against those teams is actually quite good in my opinion. I was expecting Wolves to come out a little bit more defensively unsure, concede a lot more goals than that. Now the XG could actually be against them. They could have had a lot of shots against them, and the teams were simply just not clinical enough. But I generally think that 1-0 against those two kind of regarded as more attacking teams is absolutely perfect in my opinion, and maybe that's why I'm kind of edging to agree with the algorithm when saying that the Wolves fixture is actually quite a tough one. They don't actually have any United defenders as well, which might be quite surprising, but when you do look at the Wolves kind of stats, they have a ton of shots, a ton of chances created. They simply just can't finish their dinner, and that's why they haven't scored any goals. So that might be a little bit of a surprise to you that there's no United defender, but maybe Wolves can finally find their finishing boots, and this weekend they go and beat United. You never kind of know. So that's why I just wanted to cover the United assets, as I've seen a couple of people asking me if they were going to captain Bruno Fernandes, and I personally would probably lean away from it, just because I think that there are other better options with better fixtures. Now kind of watch Wolves become the worst defense in the Premier League and United go and win 5-0, but I'll kind of take that bet, and hopefully I haven't swayed you guys away from your own decision. But now getting onto the starting 11 and getting onto that to kind of 5 at the back, we have Lloris and Reguilon as the Spurs double up, and I've actually seen Reguilon be quite a popular option. He's actually risen in price. I think it was either Monday or last night, so he's currently 5.1 million. But if you do remember, Nuno Santos, the Wolves manager, is now at Spurs. He had quite a popular pick named Doherty when he was at Wolves, so maybe Reguilon is going to be the new Doherty. Maybe Doherty will be the new Doherty, and remember, he does play for Spurs as well, but I think that Reguilon right now looks a little bit more nailed than Doherty does, so that's why he's more popular. And with those Spurs lovely fixtures coming up, you can see that the algorithm, although it's only kind of taking game week 3 for example, I think when I did kind of sort it according to the upcoming 6, it also did favor Lloris and Reguilon as that double up in the defense. The other defenders we do have, we're first going to start off with Soufal from West Ham. Had an assist in the kind of fixture on Monday. Unfortunately, no clean sheet there, conceding the goal to 10-man Leicester. But I do still feel like West Ham against Crystal Palace, because it is a home fixture, have a really good chance of a clean sheet and maybe even attacking return. So I do favour the Soufal pick. The other two options we do have, starting off with Thomas from Leicester. Maybe a little bit of an outside punch here, but he has kind of cemented a place in that starting 11 and looks quite good, to be honest. So if Castagne is out injured, I think that Thomas could be a nice pick to go for. And they are facing Norwich. Now, Norwich, out of the kind of promoted side, I do consider them to be more of an attacking team. So I don't really know if they'll keep a clean sheet, but I think they've had a tough run of fixtures against Man City and also Liverpool. So maybe they'll look at Leicester and hope that they can at least get something out of this. It is a home fixture for them, also remember. So we have seen the kind of promoted sides play slightly better than away because obviously they do have that home support and they're back in the Prem. So all the fans are going to kind of be revving them up, and I think there will be quite a lot of excitement at Carrow Road. The final defender to go for is going to be Diaz, and we have seen Man City kind of rack up a couple of defensive returns, and Diaz is always a threat on those set pieces, and with Gundogan on them has been kind of locking in those corners quite well. So I mean, Diaz can always pick up an attacking return, and they do face Arsenal, which is a little bit of a tough fixture on paper, but I do think with the current form that Arsenal are in, they aren't looking too great, so you might consider this to be a clean sheet in the bag. Now moving on to the midfield, obviously Bruno Fernandes, as the algorithm really doesn't favour that Wolves fixture. Was a little bit interesting to see that it does still favour Mo Salah though. I don't know if I was kind of going for a free hit if I would have Mo Salah, and that's just because of the fact that Chelsea's defence is looking rock solid, and also from an overall point of view, with Lukaku back in the lineup, you could probably argue that Chelsea are favourites going into this one. The only thing that is in Mo Salah's kind of corner is the fact that this is at Anfield, and Liverpool have looked quite strong at home, especially with the kind of cop support who's going to be kind of raring to go for this one. Kind of the first top 6 clash in a while that Anfield has hosted. So I think that this game probably will be quite close, and that's why I probably won't favour Mo Salah, to be honest. The other two players I'm perfectly fine with just because of the fixtures. Ben Rama, 100%, probably the most informed player right now in FPL, and has a great fixture against Crystal Palace. And then also we have Harvey Barnes against Norwich, which I think if you do own Harvey Barnes, was quite a tough decision whether to hold on to him or whether to kind of move him on to maybe a better option in your eyes. But I think if I did own Harvey Barnes, probably easier said than done because I don't own him, but I probably would keep him because it is a Norwich fixture, and Norwich haven't looked too great in their opening two. So it's going to kind of depend if Rodgers manages to bench Harvey Barnes, because we did have Oyosi Perez pick up a red card, so maybe a formation change is on the cards for Leicester. But if he does start, I do kind of back him to get a return. Then going on to the front line, super hyped about this front line. Antonio looks great, in great form after kind of scoring 2 goals and I think 1 assist against Leicester on Monday night, and he just looks like he's in the best form of his life and looks in good fitness, to be honest. I think that's the most important thing about Antonio, is that if he can stay fit, he scores goals and he scores FPL points. Going on to Jamie Vardy, 100%, it's a Norwich fixture. They are probably the best fixture to kind of target in the Premier League at the moment, so no kind of problems with going with him. But then the final player could actually be a differential captain if you guys do go from. It's going to be Sir Harry Kane, who came out today and actually said that he's going to be staying with Spurs and he won't be moving anywhere and will be playing the summer with Spurs, which is quite interesting because the summer does last until January, so maybe he's considering to leave in January, who knows. But the fact of the matter is that Harry Kane is going to be playing in that Spurs shirt for at least the medium term. So against Watford could, as I said, be a differential captain, but I'm pretty sure most of us don't even have Harry Kane in our team, so I wouldn't kind of be ripping up your team right now to fit in the English striker. So you guys can clearly see here that the fixtures that are being favoured are West Ham versus Crystal Palace, we have Leicester against Norwich, and then finally Spurs versus Watford. And I kind of agree with that. I think all the fixtures there should be quite favourable for those respective teams, and I'm pretty sure if you have some of those players, you should be looking at some big scores come the end of Game Week 3. And now moving on to arguably the more interesting point of view, it's going to be the top 1000 template team, which is going to show us what players are more highly owned than others in the top 1000 overall ranked managers. And the talking point that was quite interesting for me when I did look at this top 1000 template team was that the majority of players are quite highly owned. And what that kind of shows us is that there's been kind of a small pool of players that have performed really well over the opening 2 game weeks, and there hasn't really been much competition from players outside that pool, to be honest. And what this kind of shows is that if you guys didn't own these players, you might not be doing as well as you probably hoped. But what it also does show is that just because you didn't own specifically 3 players, for example, doesn't mean that your decisions weren't that bad. Maybe your options over the upcoming game weeks actually perform better than the top 1000. You kind of never know in FPL, and I wouldn't be kind of beating myself up too much if you didn't specifically have this starting 11. The bench on this team is a little bit more interesting than the best predicted team for Game Week 3, and the simple reason for that is that there are kind of higher owned players. For example, in a goalkeeper position, some people either go with Sanchez or they'll go with Schmeichel, and that's why you'll see that he finds himself on the bench. But then the rest of the bench is actually quite cheap. We've got a Marty, we have Brownhill, and then finally we also have Ben White. So Ben White's ownership has completely tanked over the last 2 weeks, and I'm actually surprised that he hasn't had a price drop. So if you guys are a Ben White owner, I probably would be expecting a price drop relatively soon. But that's enough about the bench. Let's get on to the starting 11. And if I had to talk about the starting 11 in one word, and one word to kind of describe it, it it would be template. I mean, just look at this team. I'm pretty sure I saw this team about 10,000 times in preseason, and what that kind of shows you that if you were going template this season, you probably ended up doing quite well. Starting off with that backline, 100% the most template backline you're going to see. Sanchez in goal. We've got Luke Shaw, the double up on Liverpool assets, Tsimikas, and then also Trent Alexander-Arnold. I have this exact kind of backline. I'm pretty sure you will as well if you're watching this video. Drop it down below if you don't. I would actually be quite interested to see if you guys don't have this exact team and have a couple of other differentials where you are in the overall rankings. Because if you are doing quite well in the overall rankings, it's always interesting to see kind of the team composition that you guys are running with. Nothing really to say about this defense because I have it myself. I think it's perfectly fine to do. The interesting thing though about this defense is that Tsimikas pick. It's going to be interesting to see what the top 1000 managers actually do with Tsimikas, as I have seen some managers over on Twitter kind of downgrading him to Duffy or moving on to another player like a Livramento from Southampton. So there are a couple of 4.0 options that are coming out and are actually starting for the respective teams. So maybe keep your eyes on those ones if you want to get some cheap bench fodder. The midfield department probably has been the clutch moment of this draft. It's because all of these players have been doing quite well. I don't think Mo Salah and Fernandes did that well in game week 2, but definitely game week 1, all eyes were kind of on these two premium assets, and I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to be for the majority of the season. I think that Mo Salah, Bruno Fernandes, as long as the fixtures are good, they should end up getting a couple of points. But then the two kind of differentials at the start of the season, we have Ben Rama and we have Greenwood. Remember, both these options were quite lowly owned at the start of the season, which shows you that you don't necessarily have to go super template to do really well. I mean, Ben Rama, I'm pretty sure his ownership was under 10%. Greenwood might have been as well. And then these two options at 7.5 and 6 million have been absolute FPL gold, and I am expecting him to kind of return similar points for the upcoming game week. So just because you guys didn't have these two players in game week 2 doesn't mean it's too late to get them, and I would probably suggest bringing in at least Ben Rama if you don't have him for the upcoming game week 3 and also game week 4. Then going on to the front line, this was also pretty template. I had this for the majority of preseason, but then I managed to switch my formation up to a 3-5-2. It's going to be Antonio, who has 100% been the best forward to own, and I would recommend getting him in if you guys don't have him. It's a kind of similar situation with Ben Rama. The fixtures look great. West Ham are playing great, so that's probably going to equal some FPL points, at least for the short term. Then Danny Ings has also been playing quite well. The only thing about him is that kind of his shots in the box, his XG hasn't been that high. Obviously scoring that bicycle kick in game week 2, which was quite unexpected, but it is Danny Ings, a really clinical finisher, so he doesn't need many chances to kind of score, and I'm hoping at least in game week 3 against Brentford that he can still return at least a goal, to be honest. Then the final forward is going to be Tony, a player that a lot of managers are actually kind of losing patience with. I don't know how I feel about Tony. I think that it's kind of easier because I didn't start with him, but if I did own him, I think it might be quite hard to kind of downgrade him and upgrade a midfield department, because I think that Brentford still haven't really shown their attacking form, and I think with a couple of good fixtures, if they do have them, I think that Tony can end up returning quite well. But I do think this was kind of a debate that I had at the start of the preseason, where I was kind of thinking about having a 6.5 forward in Tony, or maybe having a 6.5 midfielder with someone like a Rafinha, and you can kind of see that I think the midfielders are currently kind of edging it in that value per million, and I think that's what the majority of managers are kind of downgrading Tony in order to afford a 5th midfielder. So overall, in terms of the top 1000, I know this team is template. It's probably template because it's doing well, and I guess the template is always formed around players that are performing quite well, so that's why this team looks kind of boring. But if it's scoring FPL points, who kind of cares? And I think that you guys should probably look at this and look at a couple of options like Ben Rama and Greenwood, and if you don't have them, I would probably suggest bringing them in because they do look like they're on good form and the fixtures do look quite good, at least in the short term. But this is basically wrap up the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like it if you did, and subscribe if you're new and have not subscribed yet. I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow for the ultimate guide, so kind of a reminder there, if you do have any comments that you want me to cover, any talking points, drop them down in the comments below and I'll be sure to cover them in the ultimate guide tomorrow. If you guys do see a question that you think is quite a good question or kind of similar to your own thinking, just drop a like on it, as it makes it a little bit easier for me to see what questions are at least the most popular. But as I said, like the video if you did, and then subscribe if you're new and have not subscribed yet, and I'll be signing off. This has been Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.